Republicans are absolutely losing it over leaked reports from the White House that Obama is going to act to protect 5 million undocumented immigrants. Andrew Taylor of the Associated Press did a fantastic job here going back and looking through history to expose the hypocrisy of the Republicans on this issue. This is fascinating. He reports, quote, "Nearly 3 decades ago, there was barely a peep when Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush used their authority to extend amnesty to the spouses and minor children of immigrants covered by the 1986 law. In 1986, Congress and Reagan enacted a sweeping overhaul that gave legal status to up to 3 million immigrants without authorization to be in the country if they had come to the U.S. before 1982. In 1987, Reagan's Immigration and Naturalization Service Commissioner announced that minor children of parents granted amnesty by the law would get protection from deportation." Does that sound familiar? In a parallel today, the Senate acted in 1989 to broaden legal status to families, but the House never took up the bill. Through the INS, Bush advanced a new family fairness policy that put in place the Senate measure. Bush Sr. protected about 40% of the unauthorized population. Back then, that was up to 1.5 million people. Today, that would be about 5 million people. Again, does that sound familiar? It should. This is what we're talking about for Obama today. So 2 of the last 3 Republican presidents, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, did the same thing in extending amnesty to family members who were not covered by the last major overhaul of immigration law in 1986. There was no political explosion back then. The Republicans did not scream and whine and bitch and moan and say, this is unconscionable. I can't believe dictator. He's violating the Constitution. How dare Ronald Reagan do such a crazy thing? How dare George H.W. Bush do such a crazy thing? No, you know what their response was? Fucking crickets. Here's their response. It was the Jeopardy song and crickets. That was their response. They didn't care. Why didn't they care? Because it's their party. It's their party. When it's their party and they do anything, it's perfect, it's beautiful, it's precious. But if the Democrats do the same exact thing, everybody, my hair is on fire, I'm so angry, this is the worst thing ever, this is a tyrant and a fascist dictator, and he's like Hitler. I mean, we can't go a day without somebody in the Republican Party saying Obama and the Democrats are Hitler. But the best example of this, I mean, I know I always go back to this example, but I do it for a reason because I think it's incredibly telling. Look at Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, back when it was NSA spying under George W. Bush, he would say how the Democrats who are against the program, they want the United States to not be safe from terrorists. They're with the terrorists. They're not strong on terror. I mean, he had all these little, weird catchphrases that he would use that push the buttons of conservatives where they're like, oh, yeah, Democrats are weak. Yeah, they're not for spying on everybody. They're so weak. But then when Obama just carried out the same programs, what happened? Now all of a sudden, to be in favor of the program is to violate the Fourth Amendment, right to privacy and protection from unreasonable search and seizure, and this is unconstitutional, and this is wrong, and how dare the government look into all of our information when it's only some terrorists that are the bad guys. So he just totally flipped his position. Now, it'd be one thing if, he was for spying the entire time and he was consistent in his stupidity and his hatred of the Constitution. But no, he flipped completely. Whereas a guy like me, I say it was wrong under Bush and it was wrong under Obama. It's the exact same policy and a Democrat and a Republican doing it. I don't change my mind simply by the party affiliation of the person doing the wrong action. But they don't get this. They don't understand this. They don't get this because they're not bright people. They're not smart people. These are tribal people that we're talking about. So back when Reagan does amnesty, back when Reagan raised taxes 11 times, back when Reagan cut and ran from Lebanon, then all of those things were defined as conservative and Republican and proper and patriotic, and we are for cutting and running, and we are for raising taxes, and we are for amnesty. But then if a Democrat does the same thing, tyrant, he's like Stalin, Hitler, Mao, and Pol Pot if they all had sex and had a love child.